So, we're kind of approaching mid-season now, and some pictures for the conferences are starting to form, starting to make some sense. However, there's still a lot of players out there, especially in the Southeastern Conference. We can go ahead and start there. Drew, if you have those standings up to read.
Of course. So, this is just for clarification. These are conference standings. These are not AP poll or CFP. If we had the CFP standings, we would not be on this show. We would be somewhere else. We'd probably be on ESPN.
Indeed.
But
we had it weeks early.
Yeah.
Good ear.
That's right.
We're time travelers.
But anyway, to what I feel like has been a lot of people's surprise so far. To be fair, it's only 6 games into the season, but the team out of Texas sitting atop the SEC is coming out of Kyle Field. College Station, your Texas A&M Aggies, ranked number 14th in the nation, are sitting atop the conference at 3-0. They do not, I don't know, it kind of looked like an ugly loss there for a minute against Notre Dame, especially how the game went down. But they have righted the ship as far as conference play goes, and they are at the top. Now, obviously, right behind them are the number 1 ranked Texas Longhorns, sitting at 2-0. And then right behind them are the Bayou Bengals, also sitting at 2-0 after coming off of that impressive win over Ole Miss. And then once you get beyond that, then you get down to your 1-loss teams, which include the 3-1 Georgia Bulldogs, 2-1 Arkansas, 2-1 Vandy, 2-1 Alabama, 2-1 Tennessee, 1-1 Missouri. And then you get to the teams that have to win out: Ole Miss, Oklahoma, Florida, and that's
Florida even.
Yeah, and that's to even have a shot. But I would probably draw the line at Ole Miss. Let's be honest.
Realistically, yes.
Yeah, realistically, because no offense to OU and Florida, but
they're not winning out. It's not going to happen.
No. And then the bottom feeders include a scrappy South Carolina, which I really feel bad for. A scrappy Kentucky, who, out of the 1-win SEC teams, they have the best win by far. And then under the basement, with the key thrown away, Auburn and Mississippi State. So I don't know. We don't really have a format planned out for this, but
no, we can just kind of.
Sorry.
We can kind of run through it real quick. Now you're good.
Yeah, my beautiful wife just got home, and she just got a haircut today, so she looks a lot like Jennifer Aniston. Big smile. That's exactly what the doctor ordered. But anyway, now I figured we could just go down. We don't have to go through all of them, but at least the undefeateds, I would like to go through their remaining schedule and see how that looks. So Texas A&M sat on the couch this weekend after coming off that pretty big upset against Missouri. They take on Mississippi State, and then they host LSU, and then they head to South Carolina. And I'm just going to keep it conference games here. And then they head to Jordan-Hare, and then the big game they have circled is when they host Texas around Thanksgiving. So, thoughts there, Mr. Nash?
The shocking thing here is there's a world, and a world with a decent chance that happens that A&M wins out.
Correct.
And I'm not really kidding.
Correct.
Because if you look at their remaining games, their biggest games are LSU and Texas, and they're both at home. I think at the very least they split those, honestly. But, I mean, you're talking, they went out, they're undefeated in the SEC. They are a lock for the SEC championship. And not a lot of people have I heard really talking about that. I feel like it's flown under a lot of radars because there is a lot of college football to play. They look dominant against Missouri. They had the week off this past week. We'll see if they can keep that pace. But if they do keep that pace, I mean, their only loss could be at the end of the season to Texas. I mean, you host LSU. LSU's a good team. They, beat Ole Miss in overtime. They're scrappy. They'll hang with you. But you go into College Station for that game. I don't know, man. They are right there in it, which is kind of crazy to think about. And they can make it to where nobody has a say, and you went out, you're in.
Yep.
So
the crazy thing is they could lose to Texas and turn around and play Texas a week later.
They very well could, because if Texas makes it through, we'll go through their schedule. But Texas makes it through Georgia, they're sitting pretty.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if Texas is undefeated in conference play going into if both teams are undefeated in conference play going into College Station, or hell, even if let's just operate under that assumption. Yeah, that will most likely be a rematch. Well, maybe not most likely, but it could very well be possible. We don't have to. We tried to do the hypothetical thing. It does not work.
Yeah, no, it doesn't. It gets torn apart in the next weekend, so it is what it is. But I'll roll that into Texas's schedule real quick.
Good deal.
We touched on, obviously, they're playing Georgia this week. Biggest game on the remainder of their schedule. But if you look at the remaining schedule after that, I mean, you go to Vanderbilt, which is surprisingly a juggernaut at this point in the season. Vanderbilt's going to be the dog there, so dangerous place to be in for Texas. But they take care of business at Vanderbilt after that. I mean, you host Florida, you go to Arkansas, you host Kentucky, you end it with A&M.
Yeah.
Right? So you have 2 ranked games left on your schedule, and if you beat Georgia, the only other roadblock is A&M.
Yep.
So even if you split those, you're a pretty good look for the SEC championship. Mm-hmm. So 2 teams from Texas who are in the driver's seat, really. Yep. I mean, they control their own destiny in terms of if they're going to make it to the SEC championship. So, hats off to them. They have done what they needed to do. And with A&M, obviously it's kind of that formula where if you want to lose, just go ahead and get that loss out of the way, especially if it's a non-conference loss.
Yep. I have
you learn from it and you bounce back. So, props to them.
I have a hypothetical for you. If you are on the college football playoff committee, in this hypothetical world where Texas A&M stays undefeated until they host Texas, and let's just say they lose to Texas. However, the rest of the conference has shaken out to where a one conference loss, Texas A&M still makes it to the conference championship game. If they lose to Texas back-to-back weeks in close games, do they make the playoff as a 3-loss team?
I mean, that's a good point, because at this point you're being punished for playing in the SEC championship.
Correct.
It comes back to that.
In this hypothetical, you have a 2-loss. You have a 2-loss UGA. Let's operate under that hypothetical. You have a 2-loss UGA, and you have a 2-loss Alabama waiting in the wings. And
I mean, they're not making it an over one of those teams. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. It won't be fair, I don't think. And then that kind of comes into play where it's like, you're being punished essentially for making the conference championship. That's just a tough spot. But it could happen, and that's a really good catch, because I hadn't even thought about that. Because in my mind, I'm thinking they're undefeated, but they're undefeated in the conference play. So, that would be a really tough situation.
I think there's a world where the committee understands the situation, and they're still the SEC runner-up. And
I mean, I think they could sneak in on the back end.
Yeah. That could be a fun conversation for later, if that does look like it might happen down the road.
Let's give it a few weeks on that one.
Or maybe a few months.
More like,
All right, so moving on to LSU, we've kind of touched on it a little bit. And there is this giant roadblock between LSU and Texas A&M here in a couple of weeks. But LSU, honestly, I would say, I don't know, I would rather be in Texas A&M's position than LSU's position, because, the LSU Texas A&M game is at Texas A&M. The good thing is that if LSU does drop that game, they do host Alabama. And then from then on out, if they can get through the first part of November, the rest of their schedule is not that difficult. They do also host Vanderbilt, second to last game of the season. But if they can get through Texas A&M and LSU, they're going to be sitting very pretty in conference play. It's funny how they're in 2 very similar situations.
Yes, I agree, and it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I feel like we're primed to just. There's going to be a bunch of teams in the SEC that finish, 10-2, maybe even a few 11-1 scenarios.
Yep.
Because you're looking at the remainder of their schedule. There's the two big games that they could lose. And even if you split that, I don't know, man. That it's pretty favorable, and they're another team where you lose early and you bounce back. It's not a conference game. It doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but in the grand scheme of things, not as much.
I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine if both Texas A&M and LSU won those opening week games? I mean, I don't know if we'd be having a different conversation. I think the conversation would be, yeah, man, I don't know. I think LSU could probably drop to Texas A&M and Alabama close, and probably still make the playoff. But yeah, the having a real crooked letter in the loss column, being the number 3, is not a good look for anybody unless you're a conference champion, which I don't know if that is even possible anymore in today's college football.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No. Yeah. And
that's interesting.
I don't know, man. Yeah, and then moving on to the one-loss teams, obviously UGA, they've come up a couple of times talking about the previous teams, just because they do play Texas this week. I don't know. We don't have to talk about this one too much. I feel like
on that path.
Yeah, I mean, listen. You got to win this week. If you don't win this week, you're on the outside looking in as far as the conference standings go. It is what it is. And then if you lose this week, then you're in the same position that Ole Miss is in. You got to win out. The good thing is, I feel like if we do lose this week, there's a much higher probability of Georgia winning out than Ole Miss, hopefully.
Agreed.
Hopefully.
I agree.
Hopefully.
Yeah, massive game against you hit the nail on the head. Massive game against Texas. Not a must-win, but you really needed to be able to control your own destiny moving forward. If you lose it, you can't really do that other than winning out and hoping things fall your way. But yeah, you lose this one, you can pretty much kiss the SEC championship goodbye. With how things are looking as of right now, you need quite a bit of help. Mm-hmm. And having losses that Alabama and Texas on your schedule, two of the teams that are going to be slated to make a run for the SEC championship, will not help you one bit. So, that's really the nitty-gritty of it for Georgia. I mean, biggest game of the season coming up for the rest of the way out. You host Tennessee, you go to Ole Miss. Those are two winnable games. So even if you lose to Texas, you could still win out and make the playoff. But it's all in front of you, and far from the easiest remaining schedule.
Yeah.
For these one-loss teams, you still can't write off Tennessee even at home. You can't write off Ole Miss. These are SEC teams that will play well and will beat you if you let them and make too many mistakes.
I mean,
that's really that really is what it is from a Georgia fan perspective, at least.
Yeah. And it's like everybody that's not named Texas A&M, or LSU. Their backs are against the wall, and they're going to play like it.
They're going to have to. I mean, that's the reality of it. I mean, the SEC is kind of loaded right now with teams at the top or the upper tier of it. I mean, you got a lot of one-loss teams in that upper echelon that are fighting for that spot, which is what's going to make this upcoming weekend, so special. I think is. Desperation is going to start to show.
Yep, and then there's Arkansas. They are.
They're technically right behind Tennessee in the standings. So.
Yep. I mean, that will probably no longer be the case after they play LSU. But hey, you never know what happens. Because they should beat Mississippi State after that, and they're probably going to lose to Ole Miss. They're probably going to lose to Texas, and they're probably going to lose to Missouri. But you don't know until you play the games. I think Arkansas is in a pretty good spot for bowl eligibility, which I think if you would have told an Arkansas fan at the beginning of the season, like, hey, bowl eligibility is not that bad, and they would agree with you.
No, they were moments away from firing Sam Pittman, I feel like.
Yeah. So, but
I mean, not bad at all for that program. And then you have kind of the middling teams here. I mean, Vanderbilt You went out.
Yeah.
Who knows? But
yeah, hey man.
aside from that, hey,
Yeah.
aside from that, you move into the teams that you got to win out. Really,
Yep.
Missouri is not as much. I mean, obviously they only have the one loss right now, so
Yeah.
they need to bounce back.
Yeah. Which they
in
can.
a good kind of way. They can. They're not a bad team.
I mean, they've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They've got 6 straight SEC games. So the season's not over. It's just you have a giant hurdle in going to Bryant-Denny, which, hey, South Carolina just proved apparently ain't that hard, unless you ask Georgia.
Yeah, unless you're playing there at night and you are Georgia and you spot them 28 points. Then it's a little difficult.
But, like, honestly, okay, let's be serious for a second. If Missouri can lick their wounds and get off the mat and can get the team turned around and get them to buy back in, they play Auburn this week. They host Auburn. So if they can beat Auburn like a drum, then you focus on Alabama. And then if you get past Alabama, man, I mean, you're hosting Oklahoma. Yeah, you head to South Carolina, but how much momentum is South Carolina going to have at that point? Then you go to Mississippi State, and then you host Arkansas. I mean, I don't know. If I'm Missouri, there's still a little bit of hope in there, but
yeah, very much.
Yeah.
So,
but, have we already talked about Alabama's schedule?
I think we did, or did we?
I don't think we did, unless you.
I guess we glossed over them. Well, if we did, apologies. You're going to hear it again. So you host.
This is why we need Noah. Keep us on being the third party on here.
Yeah. So sorry if this is a repeat. I'm not going to edit it out because I don't care enough. But so you host Tennessee this weekend, obviously.
Go to Tennessee.
And then, you go to Tennessee. I think we talked about this earlier in another video. I think.
I believe so.
But I'm gonna run through it again. You go to Tennessee this weekend. Obviously, huge matchup. Tough stretch in the next few weeks, and then you host Missouri. Mm-hmm. Good football team, and then you have a bye week, and then you travel to Death Valley. Mm-hmm. So you have to, in the span of 3 weeks, go to Knoxville, and then go to Death Valley. Two of the best stadiums in the SEC, the country even. Tough stretch for Alabama, and if they don't get things turned around,
it could be
not looking so hot.
It could get ugly fast. Yeah, I don't know, man. And if we've learned anything about the Iron Bowl, it doesn't matter. Like, I know with rivalry games, it's so cheesy where it's like, oh, throw the records out the window, throw the
Auburn is so bad this year.
Yeah,
I don't care.
Yeah. So I mean, if they can, they get through this 3-week stretch, they should be chilling. But anyway, so I mean, and then Ole Miss. I think we've already touched on them, but just to guarantee that we did, their big thing is Georgia. I mean, they host Georgia, so it's not impossible. Honestly, not that bad of a schedule outside of Georgia because Oklahoma, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State. Not gimmies, but definitely not the upper tier of the conference. I mean, genuinely, if you don't lose to Kentucky, Ole Miss is sitting in a pretty good spot midway through the season, but they did. So
yeah. No, shoulda, woulda, coulda, but a lot of interesting scenarios out there.